Thanks for being here today. My name's James with Knight Solutions. Today we're going to be talking about non-peril related damage, the type of stuff that is typically not covered by your insurance policy. So let's jump right in, get to talking about some of this stuff. A little bit of background information on me. Again, my name's James Thompson, Director of Sales and Marketing for Knight Solutions. You can see my HAG certifications, residential, commercial, and reviewer, level 1. I hold a Bachelor's of Business Management from Eastern Kentucky University. Since I came on board with Knight Solutions in 2017, I've climbed about 5,000 plus roofs. I've done everything from 1 to 3 story and flat all the way up to a 16-12 pitch. Also served as a team lead for an emergency tarping cat response we did after Hurricane Ian. That was a doozy. All right, so an introduction to our course today. Main points we want you to take away from this. Not all damage observed on a roof is related to a single weather occurrence. Deficiencies in maintenance, installation, or material quality, not necessarily the responsibility of insurance companies. Therefore, that's why they're not covered per the policy. Understanding how deficiencies can occur or arise over time, and the classifications of the most common roofing material deficiencies that we observe during our inspections day in and day out. All right, up first, blistering. This is probably the most common, frequently observed deficiency on an asphalt composition roofing system. Let's jump right into it. Asphalt bitumen is used in the production of asphalt composition shingles. Asphalt bitumen is a byproduct of crude oil refinement. Refinement of crude oil is not always perfect. If there's too many hydrocarbons left over in the asphalt bitumen, that's what leads to the blistering once the shingles are manufactured and then taken out in the field and installed on a roofing system. The level of deficiency in the asphalt bitumen determines if the blistering is maybe localized to a small area of the roofing system or it can be a prominent widespread condition. Exacerbating factors. Poor ventilation is overwhelmingly the most prevalent factor associated with blistering. Ventilation of a roofing system is critical for maintaining appropriate temperature thresholds of the materials. Now, I mean, even though these materials are made to last and survive through the weather and stuff like that, they still have thresholds that they need to be maintained in order for the longevity of that product. That's very critical to understand. Mixed ventilation types often lead to poor ventilation performance, increasing the chances of blistering as well as accelerated degradation of the asphalt composition shingle. Remodeling or additions often get ignored or overlooked in regards to ventilation. The hot air in an attic space must be allowed to flow from eave to ridge. So let's take just a second to break it down when we talk about mixed ventilation types. We're talking about box vents, turbines, ridge vent. There's several other types of ventilation. You don't necessarily want to mix the types. Each one is designed to work in its own regard, like ridge vent, for example. Just rolled out along the ridge, and if ventilation on the eave has been done correctly, right, the eave is supposed to intake the air, and then all the way through the attic system, all the way up to the ridge, right, is how the air is supposed to move and ventilate out through the very top of the system. Now, if you've got ridge vent on a house and you've also got some turbines or some metal turtle vents or box vents as we refer to them, right, maybe just 2 or 3 feet down from the ridge, what's happening in that situation? The intake is not necessarily being done from the eave, right, much lower at the bottom of the roofing system like it's supposed to, and then ventilated out through the ridge vent at the highest point. What may be occurring there is that the intake is actually occurring from the box vents or the turbines, which are only a couple feet down from the ridge, and the outflow is through the ridge vent. So you've got maybe 10-15% of the roof that's, ventilating correctly. The other 80-85% is not flowing and ventilating correctly. This can certainly exacerbate blistering on an asphalt composition shingle. All right, some photo examples here. Let me get my mouse up. So this is what blistering looks like on the shingles early on in its lifespan, right? Very distinct mark, very rigid sidewalls. The bitumen is usually completely removed from the shingle in this scenario, and you can see the exposed fiberglass most times. Think of blistering its occurrence, right? Think of it as the little snap pops you give to kids on 4th of July, right? They take these things outside, they throw them against the sidewalks, concrete surface, right? And they just pop, 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 pop. That's exactly what's going on when blistering occurs. These hydrocarbons that were left over in the asphalt bitumen from the production process, right? They reach a critical temperature after this shingle is taken out in the field, put on a roof, right? They reach this critical temperature and it's a little bitty tiny micro explosion. Pop! Kicks the granules off of this shingle, removes the bitumen, and this is the type of mark that you're left with right here. Another thing to remember is that this is what blistering looks like early on in its lifespan, right? But think of blisters similar to a pothole in the road, right? Potholes start out as small marks, just like blisters do, but when you go through cold cycles, freezing, water gets in this space, right, and it freezes. And we all know that water, when it freezes, it expands, right, and it takes up more space. So weathering over years and years of this being on the roofing system, right, and going through these cold cycles, blister's not always going to look like this. Eventually, it's going to start wearing down and around, and it's going to start looking dramatically different after 10, 15 years of it originally occurring. But this is what they look like early on in their lifespan. Another photo example here. A couple of really good blisters here and some other very, very small ones. All right, moving on. Up next is mechanical damage. Common causes of mechanical damage: routine roof inspections and maintenance, installation or repairs, placing rooftop equipment such as satellite dishes, solar panels, cleaning the gutters, hanging holiday lights, construction or modification on or near the roofing system, overgrown trees, shrubs, bushes, vines. Basically, this is something that's coming in contact with the main roofing material that really shouldn't have, right? A couple of photo examples to the right here. Now, these are cut marks. Absolutely, I believe these are cut marks from a razor blade. The first one on that shingle right there, right? That's somebody trimming a shingle while they're on the roofing system, just not paying really great attention to the fact that their blade, as they're trimming a shingle, is also causing mechanical damage to the one that's already installed on the roof. Similar situation over here on this metal roofing system. A metal tool or blade of some sort, right, has caused some pretty severe scratches in the surface of that roofing material. Don't believe this was the result of flying debris, for instance, right? Now, in some cases, flying debris, some marks like this during an inspection could potentially be covered by an adjuster if they could justify there's some kind of flying debris or this was a hurricane situation. Obviously, everything's flying around, tornado, right? That's one situation. But when you're doing an inspection in an area where there has been no tornadoes and there has been no hurricanes, right? You see marks like this, you don't see any other peril-related damage such as wind, hail, tree fall damage on this roofing system. If this is all you're observing, mechanical damage can very likely be the explanation. Usually happening, again, during installation or during maintenance, hanging holiday lights, all that good stuff, right? People are just not very careful sometimes. Another thing with the metal, the damage to the metal roofing material right there, I mean, I see quite a bit of rust actually built up in those scratch or those cut marks. That's an indication to me that this is not recent at all, right? It's been that way for quite some time. Oxidation, rust has taken over and has presented itself. That lets me know that it's maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years old, right? Trying to pinpoint age exactly, that's a whole nother conversation we're not going to get into today. A couple more types of mechanical damage. Again, the tool marks, the cuts, scuffing, marring, footfall, and damage on repair. This is an important one to understand. So my first photo example right here to the left. Down towards the bottom of this photo, you can see, hopefully you can see the color discrepancy. Down towards the bottom, those are newer shingles that were put in there during a repair process. And what did they have to do to the original shingles above them in order to accomplish that repair process? They had to lift them up. They had to manipulate the shingles to some degree, right, in order to get new shingles to slide in underneath of them, and then also to be able to reach up underneath the original shingles to place nails in the new shingles, right? You don't want your nails exposed. They have to be hidden by the course of shingles above it. So during this repair process, right, those shingles are being lifted, manipulated, maybe too much, maybe too far, maybe too many times. And if you can see, right? There's some creasing, very prominent creasing, some very prominent granule loss to a few of these shingles that were manipulated during that repair process. DOR, this is what we commonly refer to as damage on repair. So I do an inspection on a property like this. I see there's a repair been made. I see the shingles directly above that repair have been manipulated, creased, damaged in some form or fashion. To me, that's not wind damage, right? This is not to be confused with wind damage elsewhere on a roofing system where what is it we're typically looking for to call possible wind damage, right? We're looking for creasing, we're looking for granule loss, we're looking for the shingles that have been lifted. Now, if I see this elsewhere on a roof, yeah, I may very well call that possible wind damage. But when I see it directly above a prior repair, that's usually a very, very, very good indication that this was done during the repair process. Therefore, classified as damage on repair, kind of falls into a mechanical damage category. Second photo example over there, this is a tree, a shrub, a bush of some sort. There's actually, looks like a tree limb downed that maybe had just been trimmed, something to that effect. This was a pretty new shingle, pretty new roofing system. I did an inspection on there. There wasn't any other peril related damage, wind, hail, tree fall anywhere else on this roofing system. There was a tree right next to this elevation that was very tall. I think that limb had just recently been trimmed off of it. Don't believe this was the result of any storm activity. Again, the limb was just in too close vicinity of the house, right? So as it was growing, getting bigger, this tree limb comes in contact with this roofing system regularly, and it starts this rubbing effect, right? Just as the breeze is blowing every day. And so I throw the word breeze out there, and people just automatically think, or some people will try to say, oh, that's wind. That's wind related. No. I believe technically per the policy, now I'm not a policy expert, so take all this as a grain of salt, but that's a maintenance issue, right? You should definitely be trimming trees, bushes back around your house so that they're not in physical contact with the materials of your house, especially your main roofing surface. That's a maintenance issue, not the type of thing that's typically covered by an insurance policy. A couple more photo examples here. Now, same situation, the one to the far left. Again, tree, bush of some sort, right? Consistently rubbing on this shingle for a long period of time, wearing it down. Not something that we would call wind damage. Middle photo right here, I believe that was a clay tile, if I remember correctly. I classified this as footfall, right? Again, falling into the mechanical damage category. Did not see consistent peril-related damage anywhere else on this roofing system. I think somebody just misstepped on this roofing system, right? They kind of stepped right in the middle of that clay tile. Clay tiles, concrete tiles, any other kinds of tiles, even wood shakes. Accessing these is extremely, extremely dangerous. There's always a huge risk of footfall, right? Traffic, footfall damage on these materials if you don't know what you're doing, if you're not climbing them, traversing them correctly. I believe you definitely want to stick to the butt edge of those tiles or shakes, right? What is where there's no gap underneath of it, right? It's in physical contact with the tile or the shake underneath of it, therefore creating a little bit more of like a solid surface for you to step, put your weight on. You step right in the middle of that tile, right? There's a little bit of gap between that tile itself and the sheathing or whatever's underneath of the tile itself. So if you step in that area and there's a little bit of gap, you put your full weight on it, right? You obviously risk breaking it, just like what we see in this photo here. Photo example to the right, classic rib metal panels. Again, right here at this junction point, I believe somebody had stepped on this multiple times, traversing back and forth, either during maintenance or during installation itself or some other form of fashion. Don't believe this was due to a tree fall. Don't believe this was a hail strike. Nothing peril related, right? So this is the type of damage we would classify as mechanical. All right, our next category is age and deterioration. Most notable forms of age and deterioration that we see, again, day in and day out. Granule loss, algae, lichen, moss growth, and just normal accelerated degradation. Color discrepancies due to fading, mismatched lot numbers, repairs, heavy oxidation buildup on the surface of the roof. Cracking is a huge one, either from thermal expansion and contraction or from footfall. Cracking can occur either way, right? You step on ridge caps repeatedly over and over and over. They're flexing every time that you step on them. Eventually they will crack. Agent deterioration happens no matter what. This is one of those things you absolutely cannot stop. Even if you go out and you buy one of these fancy designer shingles, right, and they say lifetime shingle, they say 50, 60, 70 years, they could call it a 100-year shingle if they want to. The fact of the matter is that sooner or later, it is going to age. It is going to deteriorate. It is going to wear out. It's not a forever type of material. Nothing is. I don't care what anybody says. These things experience age and deterioration. So photo example here to the right, obviously the most notable form of age and deterioration, granule loss, right? This is a 3-tab shingle. I believe I gauged it as a 20-year 3-tab shingle. I know there's some people within the industry out there that will argue there's no such thing as a 20-year anymore. I believe they're pointing towards 25. People point towards the shingle gauges being inaccurate, all that stuff. Never mind all that. It's a 3-tab shingle. It's lower on the totem pole as far as quality and longevity when we're talking about asphalt composition shingles. And so, I gauged this roof at, I believe, 12 to 18 years of age. It's pretty near the end of its lifespan, right? It's experiencing a lot of granule loss. This is the kind of thing we typically see when we're walking around on a roofing system and performing an inspection. This isn't the result of wind. This isn't the result of hail, tree fall, anything like that. This is just normal age and deterioration over a 12 to 18 year span of time on that roofing system. Common causes. Again, the foot traffic from repeated access, maintenance, repairs, satellite installation, hanging holiday lights, exposure to sun, wind, rain, especially on southwest facing slopes. Now, I do have the word wind in there, right? But there's a big difference between just normal wind every day. I mean, the wind's always blowing everywhere. There's a big difference between saying exposure to wind versus wind damage to a shingle, right? When we say wind damage to a shingle, that's more of a single occurrence. High wind, micro bursts of wind, 70 mile an hour, 80 mile an hour, 90 mile an hour, tornadoes, hurricane situations. That's the type of thing we would call wind damage to, right? But wind exposure just normally over 12, 15, 20 years of lifespan on the roofing system. That's what we're talking about when we say exposure. Poor maintenance of surrounding trees, bushes, vegetation. We've already covered a little bit of that. Poor material quality, poor installation, inadequate ventilation, right? We've already touched on ventilation a little bit. All of these things play a huge role in the overall age and deterioration of main roofing material. So a couple more photo examples here, right? These are ridge caps on the left, right? And the ridge is where people like to kind of gravitate towards as far as standing, resting for a minute, walking back and forth on a roof. And so I do expect to see, quite a bit of age and deterioration to ridge caps for this reason. Same thing in the second photo example over here, right? Except this is in an area of the roof where I absolutely wouldn't expect heavy foot traffic, repeated access, right? It's right at the rake edge of the roofing system at the far end of the house. So I'm not going to say I would blame this on repeated access, somebody stepping on it multiple times, and that's why it's cracking. This roofing system just happened to be, I think, beyond its expected lifespan. And so I think that played a key role in it. Another thing is maybe a little bit of that tree vegetation in the background could have played a small role in it as well. Another thing I haven't mentioned just yet is animals, birds, maybe squirrels, chipmunks, whatever else, raccoons, anything else I can throw in. For birds especially, right? This is one area of a roof where they typically like to gravitate towards. They love this perch point because they get the best vantage point in all directions. Front, rear, left, right, straight down off of the rake edge towards the ground. This is where birds love to hang out the most. And birds, they do whatever they want. They'll be up there pecking, scratching around. I think that has something to do with the accelerated degradation of the ridge caps in this particular area of the roofing system. All right, a couple more examples of age and deterioration here. First photo on the left is a modified bitumen, an ungranulated modified bitumen. So what we're seeing here is extensive cracking. When it's this bad and when it's like spider webbed like this or alligatored, right? We call this alligatoring. When it gets to this point, right, it kind of looks like the skin on the back of an alligator. Obviously, that's why we call it that. Now, this is, again, 12 to 18 years, maybe 15 to 20 years worth of time spent on this roof. Just repeated hot and cold cycles, repeated expansion and contraction of the materials, and this is how you get thermal cracking to this kind of extent. Again, not the result of wind, hail, anything covered by insurance. This is just normal age and deterioration. The middle photo right there, lots of moss, algae. I keep doing that a second time. Algae, lichen growth on these asphalt composition shingles. Can't really see it too much in the background in the photo, but I believe there was a really tall tree nearby, kind of overhanging part of this slope. That's typically where you're going to see the most algae, lichen, moss growth on a roofing system. Fun fact about lichen, if you don't already know, lichen can be very destructive to asphalt composition shingles. They actually feed on the ceramic granules of an asphalt composition shingle. And so whenever they finally die, deteriorate, they dry, they pop off of the shingle, they leave these very nice circular blemishes that are very easily mistaken for hail impacts sometimes. So that's very important to understand. Thermal cracking example over here on the right. These are vertical in nature. They don't always have to be vertical. Sometimes they can be very horizontal. They can be very spider web-like, depending on the type of shingle that we're talking about. All right, let's talk about nail pops for just a couple minutes. What causes nail pops? Temperature is the overwhelming driving force, right? Constant expansion and contraction of materials. Again, this is why ventilation is so critical on a roofing system. Everybody should think about roofing systems as if they are a living, breathing organism. Every day during the day when they heat up, they expand. Every night when they cool down, they're contracting. Every material is doing this to some degree. So nail pops, right? When your wood framing, your rafters, ceiling joists, all that good stuff, right? And even moisture levels in the air, right, during hot and cold cycles, all plays a factor here. And as the materials constantly expand and contract, the nails can work their way up out of a hole, put pressure on the underside of a shingle, and eventually wear a hole in it. So again, back to the exacerbating factors: poor installation, poor ventilation, improper nailing surface, incorrect fastener type. Extreme weather events also plays a role in the overall frequency of nail pops observed on a roofing system. So our photo examples again, first one here on the left, that one's pretty fresh. Nail has broken through the surface of the shingle. I can still actually see the part of the shingle sitting on top of the nail head is still there. That lets me know it's pretty fresh. Examples to the right. Now these shingles, the nail hasn't broken all the way through the surface yet. It's just kind of keeping that shingle in a cupped position. Right, but that does make it much more vulnerable to wind, right? So it is something that we look at, we want to note, we want to pass this information along to our customers in our reports and give them a better understanding of the overall condition of this roofing system. A couple more photo examples. Again, cupped shingle, not yet broken through the surface. Oops, what happened? Back up. And then the example to the right, metal roofing system. So this isn't a nail, it's a screw, but same principle going on here. How did that screw back up all the way out of its hole? Well, constant expansion and contraction of the materials. Maybe the sheathing wasn't great in this area. And so over time, long periods of time, right, it's very slowly backing up out of this hole where it's supposed to be. All right, spot defects. Spot defects are the types of anomalies oftentimes the result of manufacturing or installation deficiencies. Spot defects can be localized to a single area of the roof, or they can be a widespread condition throughout the entire roofing system. Spot defects can oftentimes mimic other anomalies, such as blistering, mechanical damage, age and deterioration. GB, my first photo example there, this is what we call granule bonding. I think this is something to do with the manufacturing process. Maybe the temperature of the bitumen was not perfect during manufacturing. Maybe during time the shingles are going through the blender, which is the machine that adds the ceramic granules on top. Maybe the temperature is off there. Maybe there's some kind of foreign material or substance that was introduced that wasn't supposed to be there, right? Maybe that messed up the adhesion of the asphalt bitumen or the ceramic granules to the bitumen itself, right? A number of things I can run through my head, maybe why this has happened. But again, this is not just normal granule loss. The rest of this roof, it was pretty young in age. I would have said less than 8 years maybe. So I wouldn't really expect to see this kind of granule loss on that shingle, which is why I classified it as granule bonding. Other photo example to the right, spot defect. I think that's very much like a foreign substance being introduced on that material. So the adhesion of the asphalt bitumen and then the granules, you end up with this spot that doesn't necessarily look like normal granule loss. It's certainly not blistering. It doesn't fall into mechanical damage category either, right? That's why we classify this as a spot defect. Couple more examples. Again, some granule bonding only to the laminate portions of those shingles, not the base mat of the shingle, right? Doesn't seem to fit, doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. Kind of why we call this spot defect. And then my example to the right, I absolutely believe that that spot is from bird droppings. That's a whole nother story, another ball game to get into, but the short and skinny of it is that bird droppings can turn acidic based on what they eat, and the acidity of their droppings, right, will eat through the ceramic granules, will eat through the asphalt bitumen of a shingle, right, and you're left with spots that look like this. Don't really look like anything else. It's a very distinct pattern, very distinct looking mark on a roofing system. Some more photo examples here. Again, spot defects. These don't necessarily look like anything else that we've discussed here today. It's not blistering. It's not mechanical damage. Again, which is why we classify it as a spot defect. There may be numerous explanations for how spots like this turn up on a roofing system. We covered a couple of the possibilities today, but honestly, there's plenty more possibilities of how things can happen. All right, my favorite quote right here from an expert. Believe half of what you see and none of what you hear. I grew up with this principle. I keep this one pretty close to my heart, and I'm going to tell you what it means to me in this industry that I work in. As a ladder assist technician, I adhere to the principle of believe half of what you see and none of what you hear. This approach is rooted in the understanding that accurate assessments require first-hand observations. In my role, I don't automatically assume the presence of peril-related damage solely based on statements from a policyholder or a contractor. Instead, I rely on my own observations to make an informed judgment. In the insurance industry, it's crucial to remain vigilant throughout the inspection process. While most contractors operate ethically, there is a growing concern about fraudulent claims and the attempts to overstate damages. This has necessitated a very cautious approach for inspectors like myself, not to accuse anyone of malice, but to ensure the integrity of the claims process. And that's exactly what my customers come to me for. The integrity of the claims process. I'm a third-party, unbiased individual. By maintaining a critical eye and diligently verifying potential damage, I contribute to a fair and transparent assessment. This ensures that storm-related damages are accurately identified and addressed in a timely manner, allowing assigned adjusters to appropriately make determinations and provide customer service back to their policyholders. It's a commitment to accuracy and fairness that underlines the professionalism and responsibility associated with my role. So thank you so much for joining us today and listening to what we had to say. Nice Solutions, professional ladder assist, property, roof inspection services for insurance professionals, not just adjusters, but for engineers and like roles. Check us out on nightsolutions.com. Give us a call at the office number anytime. Thanks for joining.